Joining me now to find out, Ontario Conservative MP Stella Ambler, NDP women's critic Mylène Freeman, and Liberal defence critic Joyce Murray. Good to see the three of you here.
Hi, Evan.
Stella Ambler, I'll start with you. The Canadian military has known about sexual misconduct within the ranks going back decades. It was the CDS Maurice Baril, if I remember, called on women to bring complaints forward back in May of 1998 when Maclean's magazine did a story on this. Who is accountable for letting this culture hostile to women flourish? Is it General Lawson? Is it the minister? Who is accountable?
First of all, let me say this is completely unacceptable. No one should have to put up with this kind of disgusting behavior. And so I'm actually pleased that this report, this independent external report, has laid this out so clearly and has put forward such strong recommendations. And so in terms of accountability, I guess I would have to say that it's also a good sign and a positive step that the Armed Forces has come forward, the Chief of Defence Staff has come forward and has said that they accept all of the recommendations and that they're planning on taking action on that.
First of all, they've only accepted 2. They've accepted 8 in principle. They haven't accepted an independent office, probably the most important one. But let me just ask, from a government point of view and the minister's point of view, let me show you a clip. This is the CDS, General Tom Lawson, at committee 1 year ago, after there was another investigation by the military itself into the culture of sexual abuse and sexual harassment. They said things were fine. The picture for women, they said, was really, really good. He was pressed about it at committee. Here's what he said 12 months ago. Check this out.
I do not accept from any quarter the notion that sexual misconduct is simply part of our military culture.
A year ago, he insisted it's not part of the culture. Today, the report, and he admitted it is part of the culture, and it needs a culture change. Who is responsible for letting Canadians and officials know that there was no problem a year ago, and when that picture has now proven to be fundamentally inaccurate?
As I say, this is absolutely unacceptable, and I think the report has shown us all that. It's enlightening in a horrible way. This is something that it can't happen. No one should have to put up with this kind of abuse.
But who's accountable? I mean, I get it, but yeah. Is it the minister? Is it this? I mean, women are listening in the armed forces, and they say, "We promise there's going to be change." But a year ago, they were told there was no problem at all. How do they have confidence that the government and the military is actually going to make fundamental changes if no one's been fired and no one will say, you know what, I'm the boss, I allowed this culture that hostile to women to flourish, I got to go? Who is that person?
The Chief of Defence Staff has created this strategic response team. And so the highest ranking female general in the military today, Major General Christine Whitecross, who you just spoke to on your show, has been tasked to lead this strategic response team. I think that's actually a very good step. And I think that speaks to the accountability of the armed forces. They are taking this seriously.
All right, Mylène Freeman, your response. Where does responsibility lie? What's your take on this?
Well, we all agree that this report is absolutely shocking. The more time that we take to implement the recommendations that were made, the 10 recommendations that were made, if we take the time to do that, if we stall, basically we're just encouraging this kind of culture to continue. And so, I'm calling on the government to make sure that they implement those recommendations immediately. The more we sit on it, the more this culture continues to exist. And I think those, profound changes need to be made. We need to take action immediately. And
do you think there needs to be an independent office to investigate issues of sexual misconduct, sexual assault, or should the military have that role themselves?
Well, the report's pretty clear that it needs to be an independent process, or that an independent process needs to be set up. What that looks like is obviously still to be worked on, but there is a need for there to be a process that people can have trust in. Justice Deschamps identified a complete mistrust of the system, and in fact, turning a blind eye, things things like that that exist within the culture right now. So for sure, that is a big part of it, and it's part of the recommendations that have been only accepted in principle and therefore are only being sat on and not actually being implemented.
Joyce Murray, what's your take on the report and what needs to be done?
Well, in terms of the accountability question, I think it's no surprise that the Conservative member did not want to answer that, because clearly it is the minister that is accountable for this situation. Why did it take a Maclean's magazine investigation to shed light on what is a profoundly systemic culture of misogyny in the Canadian Armed Forces? The judge was very condemning of what's going on there.
To be fair, this goes back to 1998. I mean, the Liberals were in government as well. There's no government, whether Conservative or Liberals, that has clearly cleaned this up.
Well,
we've got
excuse
reports
me, Evan,
back in '98.
If you read the report, she mentioned that in 1998 there were changes that were brought forward, and people spoke highly of those changes. But over the time, you need to go back and make sure that the training, that the processes are working. And so it's long been time. It's been 9 years this government's been in place, and it took a Maclean's magazine. So, but here is the reason that I am very concerned that the government is not going to be serious about fixing this dreadful culture of a hostile environment, a sexualized environment that we're hearing about. One is this similar problem, same problem really, is in the RCMP, and what the government has done is passed a law that actually makes it more difficult for women to come forward, and that's why there's now a class action suit by 300 RCMP officers, women, coming forward because they're not being treated appropriately in the RCMP. And secondly, and this is the big one, Evan, the government had this report for more than 2 months. They sat on it so that they could prepare their promotional spin on this. They sat on it, and even though they knew about this well before the budget was tabled, there is not a single dime in the budget to implement the report's recommendations.
I got a couple minutes. I'll stay with you, Joyce Murray, for a sec. Are you calling for the minister? You say the minister is responsible. Should the minister resign over something like this or not? Well,
he should start by accepting responsibility and apologize to the members of the armed forces, because it's not just the women and the LGBTQ members who have been so directly affected. It is the entire culture and atmosphere in the forces that has been degraded by the situation. He should apologize. He should promise to take action, and he should have a budget to do that. He doesn't have a thin dime in this budget to respond to this report.
Mylène Freeman, we're talking about accountability. Should someone take ultimate responsibility and resign or be fired? We're just trying to get the accountability question, or maybe not. Should it be the chief of the defense staff? Should it be the minister? What's your view?
My view here is that we really just need to take action, very concrete action. Like Joyce said, the government's had this report for a while. They could have been working on implementing the recommendations, working to take concrete action. We're talking about, the people who put their lives on the line for us every single day.
Well,
that's
what's the concrete action? Is it the independent office? Is that what you want?
Implementing all the recommendations, I think, is a start.
Absolutely.
And developing what that means and track. That means tracking. That means services. That means and changing workplace culture, changing the culture of the Canadian Armed Forces in tandem with changes in policies is clearly something that needs to happen immediately. We shouldn't be waiting to do that or spending more time studying it. We know what needs to happen. It needs to happen now.
Stella Ambler, what about the government's view? The military has not accepted that they need an independent office to investigate issues of sexual harassment and abuse. Other militaries have it. The military clearly today said they're going to investigate. They're not sure. They've got all sorts of issues with that. But Madame Deschamps says that it's critical. It's her third recommendation. Right. Does your government support an independent body to investigate sexual abuse inside the military?
Well, Yes, that is one of the recommendations, and so the Chief of Defence Staff did say today that they accept them and will implement all of them through this
principle.
Through this strategic.
In principle
well,
only.
supporting it in principle means you support it.
No,
so
no. To be fair, let me just Stella
they've
Ambler,
said
just
that
to be
they're going
fair.
to implement
he did
all
not.
of them in due course, and so.
No. To be fair, I just spoke to Major General Whitecross. She did not confirm that they would do an independent office. She said we will investigate the idea, but it's very clear they haven't. And so my question: does the government want an independent office or the military to investigate it themselves?
What really matters is what Christine Whitecross, the Major General and the leader of the strategic response team, decides to do, because it's up to the Canadian Armed Forces to decide.
But why would you trust the Canadian Armed Forces if their record has, according to this report, and I don't want to tar anyone with a brush, but this report says their record has been, and I'm using the word in the report, atrocious.
Right, and that's exactly why this external independent report is so important. And as I said, the Chief of Defence Staff today has said that this report has shed light, and that it's important that we don't sweep this under the rug, and that we do take it seriously.
But to be fair, I got 30 seconds. Does your government has got to have a position on this? You've seen the independent report.
Well,
the military saying, you know what, we're not sure on the independent office. What does your government think? Independent office? No independent office.
Evan, this is not a partisan issue. This is about victims and allowing victims to come forward and changing that culture in the Canadian Armed Forces.
Well, it's about action and not just words. We're just hearing words. We need action.
Taking action.
There's a big difference between accepting and actually taking action.
There's awareness and to protecting victims and allowing people who've suffered at the hands of sexual abusers to come forward. And they have the Chief of Defence Staff has acknowledged that this is a problem, that they are going to fix it. So of course that's a good thing. That's a positive step.
Okay, I got 10 seconds. If you had this report for months, why was there no money in the budget to help the military deal with recruiting more women, which is in this report, or establishing some kind of office? Should there have been a line item to give the military more money specifically on this issue?
I am not impressed by the Liberals who are trying to make this into a partisan issue when it is clearly not.
but it's not partisan.
I
don't know if that's partisan.
Turning it into a budget issue.
They've had it for 2 months.
No, that is actually not true.
They've had this report for 2 months, and they didn't even bother to address it in the budget. That says it all.
Okay, how about Stella Ambler? Do you think that the military needs extra money to deal with this issue? And if so, is it going to be forthcoming?
I can't answer if there's going to be funding coming forward, but I can say that there are 10 very good recommendations, and that the Armed Forces has said they're acting on it, and they clearly are.
All right, I gotta let you go, but they're only acting on 2. They have only agreed in principle on the other 8. We don't know what they're going to do about it. I gotta leave it there. Ontario Conservative MP Stella Ambler, MDP Women's Critic Mylène Freeman, and Liberal Defence Critic Joyce Murray. A pleasure to have the 3 of you on. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.